So welcome back to another episode of One Man and His Quad, and it's a bit of a how-to video today. I've realised we haven't done a how-to video on this bike in ages, probably because we haven't done much in terms of maintenance or any upgrades on it in ages. But having got back off the laning trip from Bristol, I had a quick look over the bike a couple of days later, and I noticed on the rear these bushings were starting to go. On the right, if I move those out of shot, we've got the old bushings. They're upside down at the moment. You can probably notice a little bit of distortion in them. I'll turn them over. Manky old washer in there. This one though is the best example of what has actually happened to these. Being rubber, they have actually started to disintegrate. They're going to end up leaking water in, and they're just going to end up failing in the end. So I went online and found these. The great thing about these Polaris Sportsmans is the exploded parts diagrams make it so easy to find parts and part numbers in particular. You find your part number, you whack that into Google, and 9 times out of 10 there is a supplier in the UK that can supply these. These have come all the way down from Sterling, a Polaris dealer up there. They also do New Holland tractors and whatever, to an agricultural dealer. Polaris genuine parts. They come in little packets. If I grab this out of here, I've got bushings all over the place, but they come in little packets like so. That's what you're looking for. If I can show you the part number there. Part number 511 5885, and it's actually a replacement to the original parts. So they've stopped making these parts now. They brought in these new parts. I can't tell much of a difference. The washer is a slightly different colour. It's maybe a slightly different material, slightly harder as well. And if the washer didn't fall out then, but you can see how knackered that is. The washer's just falling out, rattling around inside. It's not going to do anything any good. So worth replacing these. If we get back down here on the bike, you can see we've got a top set here. Now I thought, wrongly, that it was just that bush there and that bush there that needed replacing. It's not. There's a bush there. There's a bush underneath out of sight. I don't know whether you just about picked that up on the camera there. There's one there. I'm presuming there's one underneath that the bottom of the arm there. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to replace the top bushes. I'm then going to jump on the internet after I've made this video, order another set of 4, and we'll make another video in the future of doing the bottom bushes. So just a couple of tools you'll need for the job. You'll need a socket set with a 14mm socket on the end. You can also use, I've got the big guns out just in case it wasn't going to shift, but there we go. Got an impact driver and an impact wrench there. And you'll also need any sort of open-ended spanner there. So you'll need that end. Ignore that end, that's another socket. But that's what you'll need. So a 14 on your socket set and a 16, I think it is, on your open-ended spanner. Your open-ended spanner is to hold the sway bar link there. So that just, I don't know whether you can see that, but that will just eventually, with a bit of manipulation, hold that whilst you undo the top nut. So those, quite simply, are the only two tools, even if I could learn to speak, that you're going to need for this job. So let's start with the actual job itself, and the most important thing is to jack the bike up before we start. Take the pressure off the wheels, as you can see, jacking point at the back there. And then we use a ratchet set. I think this is a 14mm socket, and the spanner you can just see to the bottom left of the spot there is a 16mm spanner to hold the actual arm in place to stop that turning around. These screws are actually quite deep, so these bolts are quite deep, so it's going to take quite a lot to get them off. As you can see, everything's a bit muddy and horrible, and it may be worth squirting a bit of WD-40 or your chosen penetrating fluid actually on the nut itself before we start this. It takes a little bit of getting going, but once it is going you can actually feel it starting to come away, and the bolt goes all the way down in between the two bushings as well. So it's only one bolt to remove in this case. You can see it's starting to come now. Apologies for the light, but let's speed this up and we'll come back to actually what happens when it does come up. So as you can see now, it's just broken free. The bushing comes up with it and you are left with the sway arm nice and loose, as you can see on that shot there. And you're also left with the old bushing. Now once the bolt's out, the best thing to do is just clean it up a bit. It's going to have mud and dirt and grit, and that's what's holding it in. So bit of WD-40, bit of wet and dry paper, I think that's about a 1200 grit, just cleans the bolt off really quite nicely. As you can see now, just getting the new bushings out. All come individual, so make sure when you're purchasing these bushings you buy as many as you need. They don't come in pairs, they just come in singles. There's a new washer in there as well that just dropped out. I took it out of the packet. And as you can see, brand new bushings, not perished. They're actually a different part number for the 570. I think they've upgraded the part. The rubber just seemed to perish very, very quickly. The bike's just over 2 years old now. And as I'm showing you here, washer in the top, bolt in the top. And the idea is then it's sandwiched in between. So before we put the new bushings back on the bike itself, obviously part of the problem we were having was the rubber was perishing whilst in use, and as a result, before I put them back on the bike, I'm using a bit of this. There's various different vinyl and rubber cares out there. That's an auto glim version. All of them about around the 10 quid mark, and you can pick whichever one you like, but that should just care for that rubber a bit better. And the only reason I went for that one, to be fair, is I went on Amazon, typed it in, it was the cheapest one I could find at the time. So you spray it on, rub that in, use a cloth, get it all massaged into the rubber, and they're ready to go back on the bike. So you can see there, as we reassemble the shaft that the bolt's going to go into. So that's all lined up now. We're going to place the bolt back in with the bushing sat in it. There is also the washer on top there. And putting it back together is quite simply the reverse of what we did. This takes a little bit of movement, as you can see. You can see my left hand's on the bushing and the bolt. My right hand is manipulating the shaft that it's going to go into. And these need to line up, and they need to line up vertically, so nice and straight, because otherwise you're going to end up with a whole host of problems with your suspension setup. Once you've just about got it lined up, you can see the bottom bushing as well on top of the shaft. Start to again ratchet it in, same socket of course. Having a few problems here trying to get it going. Of course you can use locking pliers or an adjustable spanner, just as easy to complete this job, but whatever you have at hand. But the important thing is obviously the shaft isn't to move around. It especially makes it a little bit easier when I'm doing it, but as you can see it's quite a fiddly job, but once it gets going it's nice and easy. So taking the socket off there, the ratchet, just to start things going, and once it starts going, as you can see on this shot, it's nice and easy. The new ones, by the way, have that white dot on, so it's quite easy to tell it's a brand new part. So if you sort of do this in stages, you can remember which ones have been replaced, which is quite a handy idea. As you can see, that's a 14mm socket. I do apologise, I think I did say it's a 16mm, it is actually a 14mm, which you can quite clearly see on that shot. So it'll be a 16mm open spanner, but I will try and remember to put a list of tools in the description. So once it's taut up, just give it a couple of more just to make sure it's nice and snug, and that is it, and that is the result you get, everyone. So it's a nice easy job, but it makes a hell of a lot of difference. There's the bottom one. So we've done the top pair, and the aim then is to go and do the bottom pair, which will remove the plastic 8-arm guard, and also there'll be a secondary bolt in the bottom there. But that is it from another episode of One Man in His Quad. Don't forget, you can like us on Facebook and follow us on there. Just search out One Man and His Quad, and also on Instagram. Give us a follow on there. Again, at One Man and His Quad. More videos coming out real soon. We're going to aim to do one every Friday, but we'll at least do a couple a month. And I've got a really exciting video to come next. Something arrived in the post this week, but you'll just have to keep watching. Until then, see you next time.